back to my channel. Today I'm gonna be sharing some weird writing tips that actually work. Honestly, for me, I find that the weirder the tip, the more that it works, because writing is weird. Like, we literally just like sit around and like come up with fake people and fake worlds and fake stories. It's a little weird. So why can't the process of bringing those ideas to life, why can't that be a little weird? I don't think this is gonna be a very long video. I couldn't come up with too many, but I've got a couple that have actually really helped me with completing drafts and helping with my motivation and all of that. So hopefully these help you too. Comment down below any weird things that you do that actually work and like help your writing. We can all just kind of be weird together. But yeah, let's jump right in. My first weird writing tip is to write all of the dialogue in a scene and then go back in later to add the action and like description. So like starting with dialogue as sort of like the skeleton of a scene. I love doing this. Dialogue is one of the things that comes the easiest to me. I find it very fun, and a lot of my storytelling, like how I drop lore and like backstory and bring scenes to life, is through the dialogue. So I've found that it's actually really helpful to just go in and write the whole dialogue out, and then you can go back in later and add like descriptions and like what's going on in the background and like what your characters are thinking, what your characters are doing. Like, you can kind of buff up the scene later, but starting with dialogue can kind of just help you kind of get what the point of the scene is out on the page. I made a whole video on like dialogue and how to write good realistic dialogue. And genuinely, you should just, and while this tip doesn't really help with writing realistic dialogue, this kind of helps write a good conversation if you just go in and do all dialogue at once and then go back in and add the dialogue tag and then switch it up the next line and do an action and then maybe do a paragraph in between the next dialogue of internal monologue. Like, if you just start with the dialogue, then you can fill it out and make the scene interesting later. I hope that kind of made sense, but if you're struggling to get a scene out and you know that your characters need to be talking, you can kind of just start with the dialogue and then like have them like moving through a room and like things going on around them, and like you can kind of build the scene around the dialogue. My next weird writing tip is listen to music and sit around and daydream about your book. And if you want to be even weirder, you could act out your scenes in your room to make sure they flow. You know, saying the dialogue out loud to make sure it sounds good. I have like truly worked out a lot of scenes that I'm stuck on this way. This has also helped me come up with some really devastating emotional lines for my characters to say. Just like putting on like some sad music and pretending that I am the character. It's so cringy, but is that not just like acting? Put on some sad music. Like, let's imagine that it's like an argument. You could use this for any scene, but let's imagine it's an argument between two characters. Put on some like angsty music and go there mentally with like how your character would be feeling. Feel everything that they are feeling, and then say what they would say what you would say in that situation, because that's how you get some realistic emotional dialogue, is if you go to that emotional place. And sometimes you have to physically put on sad music and make yourself like emotional to get there, if it's just not working when you're like sitting in front of a computer. But yeah, if there's like an argument or something that I'm like stuck on, I will fully just like put music on and just like pace around my room and like test different things out. And like, because to me, writing and also like an argument in a book specifically, it's almost like choreography of like something is said and then there's an emotional punch and then you react to it and then they react. There's a mix of saying things that are real and how you really feel and then saying things just to hurt the other person. Like, it's very like, it's kind of like a dance and like a trying to balance how to make scenes like that impactful and just every scene impactful. And I think going to like an emotional place really helps bring out real emotions and helps you connect to the characters, helps you brings out like emotion in you, can really help like get you in your characters' heads, if that makes sense. Not only that, but I feel like if you're stuck on a scene, you don't really know like what needs to happen, what your characters need to say, whatever, I feel like listening to music and daydreaming helps me work out those scenes that I'm stuck on, because I just like pretend that I am that character in that scene. What would I do? What would I do next? And sometimes just like sitting in front of a computer screen typing words, you can't really get there emotionally for certain scenes and stuff. And also I think as the writer, we often underestimate the stakes, like when we are trying to just tell the story. But if you get into your character's emotional state, you can kind of feel what they would be going through in that moment, and that can make it feel more alive. It can help you work through scenes because it just will flow out of you of like what you would say or whatever. Again, I don't know if that made sense. I'm kind of just rambling because there's no real way to explain these tips. They're just kind of whatever works for you, whatever version of that works for you. But yeah, daydreaming and listening to music, it gets me there sometimes. It gets me into the mental state that I need to be to bring scenes to life. I think every writer does that. Maybe I'm just trying to make myself feel better, but if you haven't tried daydreaming, you should, because it does work. It actually does work. My next weird writing tip is if you are ever like struggling for motivation or just like not really in the writing mood, I find that like just watching like a writing vlog or going on TikTok and like searching writing and watching like writing memes and all of that, just watching other people write and other people talk about their writing can just like, for me, just like really gets me right in the writing mindset, and like it just gets me starting to think about my writing and like what I'm doing next and like what I need to get done, and it just starts to get my writing wheels turning by consuming writing content. And I feel like that can be really helpful when you're sort of just like not feeling it that day. Like if I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I don't really feel like writing today, I will watch like a writing vlog or a writing tips video that maybe has something to do with what I'm writing next or whatever, and I'll just like watch that while I eat breakfast and just put myself into thinking about writing, and that usually ends up making me want to write. You can try that one if you ever are struggling with writing motivation or just like, you know, not really feeling like it. My next weird writing tip is to write with a fun font. There is like a whole like challenge, I think, where you write with Comic Sans. And apparently it's supposed to make you write really, really fast, like a lot, because it's just silly and you're not taking it as seriously, so you're just kind of like letting whatever come out. I have not tried Comic Sans, but I feel like that could be a fun video where I try writing in Comic Sans for like a week and see what happens. This can be taken like with write in a fun font, like literally write in Comic Sans or some other font that's just silly and like goofy and makes you take it maybe not as seriously. Or for me, I always for some reason find it really motivating and like it makes me want to write when I'm writing in like a cool font, or like I don't know, like instead of just, if you write on like Google Docs, instead of just writing in like the Arial font that comes up, it in Times New Roman 12, which is like what a lot of books are published in, and that can just make you feel very like professional. And also like I find it very satisfying to look at fonts like Times New Roman, and my favorite font to write in is E.B. Garamond, or however you say that. I've never said that out loud. E.B. Garamond is my favorite, So like I love looking at that font. It's very satisfying. So it makes me want to write more words because I like the way that the font looks. Weird, I know, but that's what we're doing here. Weird writing tips. Or if you're writing like multiple POVs, try doing a chapter heading and then type your character's name, like whoever the chapter's POV is in, put that one in like a cursive font and like format and like make your page look pretty. And that can be motivating, I think, because I just like to look at it. So then I'm like, I need to fill up this page. So then I just start writing. Or if you think that would make you take it too seriously, try writing in Comic Sans or like another fun font that would just make you kind of giggle and like, you know, let's just keep writing because why not? Like, this isn't serious. You can take like this tip either way, but I do feel like fonts and like the way that the page looks does actually affect the way that I write. I don't know. My next weird writing tip is more like advice, like general advice, than actually like a tip that you can implement. But basically, you can actually learn too much about writing. Like, if you are just caught up with watching like tip video after tip video, advice, writing vlogs, like reading all these articles about how to write this scene good, how to write good characters, like learning about writing and learning about craft and like making yourself better and listening to other people for things to think about is definitely obviously very helpful. And I literally make writing tips videos, so I obviously am not like against them or anything. I love them. But I do think that you can kind of clog up your imagination if you fill your head with too many rules and like, I have to do this way. This is how you do a good enemies to lovers. This is because there's no rules with writing. There are certain things that you can do to make your story bingeable, to make it addicting. There's ways to write, like if you're watching a bunch of videos on like how to write a good kiss scene, like there's definitely tips on how to write a good kiss scene, but like you have to just let it come out of you. You can't be like applying everyone else's rules, if that makes sense. When I make tip videos, I am coming from a place of like, think about this. It's not necessarily like do this, because again, I just feel like that's really unhelpful. I think it's just like something to think about. If somebody brings up like, oh, try this if you're feeling unmotivated, it's like, oh, okay. But like, writing is so personal and everybody's brain works differently. I feel like there's not a lot of like writing advice and writing tips that is universal, because not only are we as writers very individual, our stories are all so individual. I feel like if I watched a video on how to write a good kiss scene, they'd probably tell me to really go into detail with sensation and like, you know, hot and heavy, but my book is like a teen YA book. I'm not gonna go into the spice of it all. It's gonna be more just like a, he kissed me, and then we're gonna move on, you know what I mean? Like, every book is so different. I wrote like a thriller a couple years ago, and I watched some videos on like how to write a good horror, a good thriller, like how to keep the suspense up, because I'd never written a thriller before, and they said like make sure that every chapter ends in a cliffhanger. Every chapter is like edge of the seat. But for me, my book was again YA teen, and it was very character based. There was like a group of friends, and they were fighting, and they were like solving the mystery of a bunch of murders in their town, and then ultimately it turned out to be something demonic. And then, you know, the book turns really dark, and I was like, I don't know if every chapter is going to end on a cliffhanger, because there were some chapters about the characters' personal lives, so you got really invested in the characters, and like I felt like there were certain things that they were saying in these videos on how to write a good thriller that wouldn't make my thriller a good thriller, if that makes sense. Consuming writing tips and tricks and like craft videos is obviously very good, because you should always be wanting to improve, but the number one way to improve your writing is to write a lot. So if you are sort of stuck in this like twilight zone, like frozen in like the tips watching so many craft videos and like feeling sort of like you're not prepared enough and you need to learn more and more. The only really way to learn is to write. If you come up on a kiss scene and you're like, oh, I've never written one of these before, I should watch a video. Then watch a video. Like get to the parts that you're stuck on and then watch videos and consume content. Or like periodically watch a video, like a craft video, and then if you're like, oh, I was doing that wrong, then you can go back and fix it. But if you get sort of stuck in this like, you know, trying to prepare yourself, trying to learn everything and trying to research, I just think that can really like be another form of stalling, another form of procrastination. It definitely was for me, and I think a lot of younger or like newer writers get caught up in like knowing everything. I've literally been writing for like 15 years. I watch tips videos, I watch craft videos, and I'm like, I didn't know that. Like, you're never gonna know everything about something, especially something like writing, which is so unique and different for everybody and comes from our head. Like, there's not an instruction manual for how to write a good book every single time. So try not to get caught up with consuming too much craft content because it can kind of like get you stuck. Also, and this has happened to me, I would literally watch a bunch of craft videos and then I would sit down at my computer. Let's say like I was gonna write a fantasy and I watched a bunch of videos on how to write a fantasy, and then I would sit down at the computer and I would start writing and I'd be like, that's not how they said to do it. And I would like delete. I would just get so caught up in all of the sort of rules that I had just consumed that I wasn't just letting whatever come out. And I think that's when we do our best writing, is when it's just we're not thinking, we're not following any sort of rules. Again, tips videos, craft videos are great. You should always be wanting to improve, obviously, but just don't get caught up in them. And also take tips as like things to think about and things to consider, not necessarily as like set in stone facts that like you have to apply to your story and you have to do all these things. Like, just take things into consideration on whether or not it's best for your story, like specifically, if that makes any sense. Not really rules. And my last weird writing tip for this video is this sounds so weird to say out loud. Stop writing before your motivation runs out for the day. This is one of the tips that really helped me finish my first draft. Was like, if you're in the middle of writing a heated argument or something and you're like really motivated by it, you're super excited, you're typing, your fingers are flying, so many typos because you're writing too fast, like you're just loving it, then like you kind of look over at the clock, you're like, oh my god, I've been writing for like 2 hours. Stop. Stop writing right there while you are literally still so excited and motivated. Because guess what? You're gonna wake up the next day and that motivation is going to have doubled. And then you're gonna run through all your chores, run through your to-do list so you can sit back down at your computer and finish that scene. And you're gonna be so excited about writing. And then you're gonna finish that scene, you're gonna start another one, you're gonna get sort of in the middle of the scene or like towards the end of the scene maybe, but you could write some more and you're excited for what happens next. Stop and wait. You don't have to wait till like the next day if you want to write again later that day, but just leave like residual motivation for later. Because if you write a scene that you're like super excited about and you finish the whole thing, I feel like often that puts me in like a writing slump because I'm like, I finished that scene that I was so excited about. I don't want to write anymore. I find that I get a little bit like unmotivated if I like use up all of my motivation for the day. If you save some motivation, even if you are doing like maybe a more boring scene next, the motivation and the excitement, the feeling will carry over. Again, I'm hoping that this makes sense because I'm sort of just rambling. These don't really have like a form or like a proper explanation. There's sort of weird things that I do, but yeah, stop writing before your motivation runs out, because the longer that you wait, the more excited that you get. It's also like sort of addicting to your brain to like chase that motivation, if that makes sense. Like if you tell yourself like, we've got to wait till tomorrow to write that, and they're just so excited all day and all night, and then you wake up the next day double as excited, and then you sit down and you write, it just flies out of you, and then you're left feeling so satisfied because you were so excited and you built it up, and then you got to write it, and it's just like very satisfying. And I don't know if this is like toxic, but I kind of found that I became like addicted to writing my book because I just kept chasing the motivation. And this tip, like saving some of your motivation, I think was one of the reasons why I actually finished my first draft. So yeah, that is all of the tips that I have for this weird writing tips video. I hope that these tips gave you something to think about. And I do hope you'll try some of these out just because they're a little bit weird and they're just sort of silly. Again, comment down below any weird writing tips or writing habits that you have. Share sort of maybe unconventional habits that work for you. Thank you so much for watching. Please like the video if you liked it, and if you liked this video and want more content like this, you should subscribe. But yeah, with all that being said, thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a really great day.